Sarah Bois. I'm the Director of Research and Conservation at the Linda Loring Nature Foundation. And I am going to share my screen before we get started. All right, great. Thank you all for joining me today to talk to you about iNaturalist and our Nantucket BioBlitz. So first of all, what is a BioBlitz? We're going to be talking about our 2025 Nantucket BioBlitz, but I wanted to talk about BioBlitzes in general. So BioBlitzes have been used globally for a very long time, and essentially they're an intensive survey of a defined area, looking for as many organisms as possible. So it's a way to understand more about biodiversity of a specific area. Sometimes they're of a very specific property. Sometimes they're of a bigger geographic area. And sometimes they're about all biodiversity. And then sometimes they have a specific target. It's usually community of scientists, experts in certain fields, community members, school groups. It's seen as both a way to get data about the species around us, but also an educational opportunity so people can learn about the biodiversity around them. There's bioblitzes in many different areas. But our Nantucket BioBlitz, our 2025 Nantucket BioBlitz, is all about what we can see here on Nantucket. So the Linda Loring Nature Foundation and the Nantucket Land and Water Council have been partnering on the Nantucket BioBlitz since 2021. I'll show a few highlights a little bit later of from some of our previous BioBlitzes. Essentially, this is an island-wide collaboration. So we're looking all across the island. It's focused at peak growing season. Previously, it's been held in July, and this year, you can see the dates below. We are holding the BioBlitz from July 25th to August 8th. And that way, we're actually, for this 2-week period, we're having the last week of July, basically, and the first week of August. And that might give us a little bit more biodiversity or get some additional species that we weren't able to get when we solely focus in July. And we're really about adding biodiversity information to the island-wide information. And all these data that we're collecting are open to the public, so anyone can see them. And that's also a way to showcase and celebrate the biodiversity within our community, learn from community experts and others. We use iNaturalist as the tool for collecting this information, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But I just wanted you to both look at the dates so we have everyone knows when the BioBlitz is, but also that we're going to be having a wrap-up party on that final day, August 8th, at the Linda Loring Nature Foundation, 1 p.m. at 110 Eel Point Road. And that information will be again at the end of this presentation. So the Nantucket BioBlitz. Before we get into some more details about it, I just wanted to note that many of the pictures that you're seeing here, including this great golden digger wasp, are from previous BioBlitzes. So these are all Nantucket species that have been collected by people, not necessarily me, during the BioBlitz. So we ask lots of different questions with the BioBlitz. So we see this as a community event, educating the public about biodiversity, but also providing information for us as conservationists, researchers, and land managers about what species are around. So we want to know how many different species are here, which species and taxa are the most common at this time of year, or the most commonly seen and photographed. Are there invasive species that we're concerned about? Are there exotic species that have never been seen here before? Are there new species or something rare or unusual that we're going to be seeing? These are all the kinds of things we like to see and highlight. Also, are there things that are surprising or intriguing? And that could mean different things to different people. So something that might be surprising to me might not be surprising to someone else who already knows about that thing. Like I am obsessed with slime molds now. Every BioBlitz, I learn about a new slime mold. Don't worry, we have a couple of pictures of them a little bit later. But they might not be surprising to someone who already is familiar with that group. And then other questions. So people might have other questions and things, properties they want to survey, certain areas and habitats they might be interested in. So there's lots of different reasons and things that we can learn about from a BioBlitz. So, at its most basic, the Nantucket Land and Water Council and Linda Nature Foundation, our BioBlitz, as I said, uses iNaturalist. So, the first thing we have to do is use iNaturalist. You can either download it. The easiest is to download it as an app on your phone, which is completely free, and set up an account. You can also do it completely on a desktop computer. And if you do that and are more interested in that, you can reach out to me individually and I can show you that a little bit more. There's a little bit more that goes into adding the location information. But if you have the iNaturalist app on your phone, you go around anywhere on Nantucket, take a picture of something alive or evidence of something being alive, and then upload it to iNaturalist. And then once you submit that photo, it's added to the data to the BioBlitz. There's also, we're going to go over how we can also learn more about the species through iNaturalist and maybe identify it yourself or have others identify the species for you. So I'm going to go over, from here on out, I'm going to be going over iNaturalist, what it is, and how we use it. So iNaturalist is a global database. It's considered one of the largest communities dedicated just solely to exploring biodiversity. One of my favorite things about it is that it was started by a graduate student as his master's project, where he was looking for a way to kind of catalog biodiversity information for his project. And it's turned into this global species database that scientists use, many researchers use, as well as people that are keeping track of community data. So it's many things to many different people. So it's a crowdsourced species identification tool, so we can learn more about the species we're taking photos of. It's an occurrence recording tool, so we can record occurrence of a species at a given place and time by adding it to this database. It's a records database. It's a data source. So like I said, researchers use the data that's input into iNaturalist to look at species distributions, habitat preferences, and things like that. It's also a collaboration tool, and that's one of the ways we use it a lot is by we can collaborate with others, like the Land and Water Council, to work together to kind of collect this biodiversity information. So when you go to iNaturalist, maybe on your desktop first, this is the way you can sign up to sign up for a free account. And once again, here's a pictorial of how it works at its most basic. So you record an observation, in this case, take a photo with your phone. You share that photo on iNaturalist, so it's shared to other naturalists, and that's where you learn more about your findings. And while this is a general pictorial overview of how easy it is to use, I'm just going to go into details about how we make an observation and how that becomes part of our biodiversity record. So iNaturalist, why it's so great. I mean, I don't work for them, but you'd think I do the way I talk about it so much. But iNaturalist works because so many people are using it. So if you look at, this is just, I think I took this screenshot last week. So there's over 250 million observations globally. Each one of these little red checks that you're seeing on this map is an observation. And so you can see it's a global database and covers most of the area of the world and the oceans. So all these different species observations globally helps create a database of information that can be used to identify other species. Over 3,000, almost 4,000 or 4 million, I should say, observers globally. So lots of people contributing to these databases. And so far, we have over 518,000 species globally. And all of that works together, and that's this crowdsourced part of the identification and use of iNaturalist. So I'm going to go through an example as if we're making an observation so you can see how easy it is. And this is new to me that iNaturalist has a new app. And so I'm going to start with what's now called iNaturalist Classic. And so that's iNaturalist as it has been as an app for a long time. So if you've had this on your phone already, you probably have iNaturalist Classic. And it still functions and it's still being updated, but there's a secondary application now, which is just called iNaturalist, and it's a little bit different. It looks a little bit different. It functions very similarly. The data are all the same. The output is all the same, but I'm going to show you both examples. So first, I'm going to start with iNaturalist Classic. And then I'm going to run through the same example just briefly to see with the new iNaturalist app, just so you can see what it looks like if that's the app that you're going to be using. Because I want everyone to be comfortable with being able to take these observations. All right, so here we go with our example. Let's say you're out on the eastern side of the island, or maybe you're over at Lindaloring and you see this cute little turtle over here, just chilling in some leaf litter, and you take a picture, and that's how you make your observation. You could add it to iNaturalist right away or take a picture through iNaturalist, but I prefer to take pictures when I see something first and then upload it to iNaturalist later. That way it's a little less disturbing to that individual. And so I'm going to take a picture, and then later I'm going to open iNaturalist. And so when I first open iNaturalist Classic, this is what it looks like. You can see my previous observations, and then you see at the very bottom this observe. And so that's the button you would click. And it takes you to this choice where you can either go to your camera and take a photo from there, or you can go to your photo library, and you can even record a sound. I'm going to go to my photo library where I stored that turtle photo, and I'm going to use that. And so now you can see on the next page, there's that turtle up in the corner. That's the primary photo. You can add additional photos. So if you have a plant, let's say, and you want to take leaves and flowers and habitat, you can add multiple photos. But for this turtle, I just have this one photo. You can also see when I upload the photo, automatically it has the date and the time and my location. So those are vital pieces of data for identifying the species and for submitting to iNaturalist. If I didn't want people to know exactly where the species was, I can click the geoprivacy button and have some other choices for either blurring that, so it's kind of in the general area but doesn't tell you exactly where, or you can just completely turn the geolocation off. The best part of the data is actually having that geolocation, so that I do encourage you to keep that open. The other thing I have learned from people is sometimes they have their geolocation turned off on their phone generally. So if you do want to submit data, you do have to have that geo privacy piece open. And if you have any questions about that, you can feel free to email me. The captive or cultivated means basically, the default is that this is a wild species, and you should mostly be collecting things that are in the wild, but you can also sometimes add garden plants and things like that. All right, and so then the kicker is really, what did you see? So you look at this area right here, and this is where the magic happens on iNaturalist. So if you click this, it'll think about it, and by think about it, I mean iNaturalist will use all the data that's already been inputted ever into iNaturalist. It looks at the photo ID, photo recognition. It looks at where you are and when you are for figuring out what likely species that is. And so it's pretty sure that it's at least a painted turtle. So Chrysemnes is the genus. And then it gives you sort of choices for what species it might be. It's either a painted turtle, a southern painted turtle, or a northern red-bellied cooter. I mean, I happen to know that we don't have southern painted turtles or red-bellied cooters here, so I'm leaning towards painted turtle at this spot. But if I'm still not sure, I can look at this little I button, which is the information button, as you may know. And so when you click on that, it brings you to, excuse me, this species information page about painted turtles. It gives you additional pictures. You can look at a map of where these typically occur. You can read the description to feel good about your choice. And you can say, yes, you know what, this is a painted turtle. I'm going to go for that. I'm going to select painted turtle, and I'm going to go with that observation. Oops. Okay, so once I selected painted turtle, you can see that it's been selected there. I did want to also mention you can add notes here. So if you want to say you observed it laying eggs, or you observed it, next to another turtle, or I don't know, you can add whatever you think for additional notes. They can be for you or for anyone that might be identifying this. It might be useful additional information. All right, when you have added all that data, you hit share, and that goes up into iNaturalist and it's uploaded for everyone to see. It's syncing here, so it's like thinking about it. And then this is like the second part of iNaturalist that I think is really powerful, is you can say what you think it is, even with high confidence that you know that this is a painted turtle. But it's not a research grade observation until it's been confirmed by others. And that is one of its most powerful tools, is all these millions of people that use iNaturalist also will help identify your observation. So in this case, I put that it was a painted turtle. And then, a few days later, someone else said, yes, it is a painted turtle. And then a few days after that, someone said, actually, you know what? It's an eastern painted turtle. So it's not only a painted turtle, it's a subspecies of eastern painted turtles. And so we can agree on that. And so I think that's really powerful. So now this observation is a research grade observation and can be used by others to, if someone's wanting to learn more about painted turtles on Nantucket. All right, so I'm going to very quickly go over the same example, but for the newer iNaturalist app, you can see just based on these screenshots that it looks a little bit different. It's very pictorial and uses some different wording, so I didn't want to be confusing. So we're just going to go through this quickly. So once again, we see this amazing painted turtle and we take a picture. And the next steps are wanting to make an observation. So when I open up my new app, this is what it looks like. So you can see my most recent observations. Once again, it's very pictorial. And then you would click on this little plus button down here, which is pretty intuitive to be adding an observation. It gives you choices once again, whether you want to take a photo or go to your photo library, among other things. So I'm going to go to my photo library. And I selected as evidence, again, that turtle, that painted turtle picture that I took. Once again, it has the location information, the date and the time. And then it has the geo privacy is open and this organism is wild. So it's telling you, yes, the default is that it's wild. You can choose separately if it's a cultivated species or a pet or something like that. But we want to be collecting mostly information about wild species. Now, one thing that could be confusing is the thing that we're going to select is ID with AI. And I know AI, it might not be the, the most wonderful terminology to use, but that's basically the same. It's using the same exact algorithm and picture identification tool as classic iNaturalist did. It's just using different terminology. So you're identifying it still in the same way as classic iNaturalist always did, which was using the database, using the photo recognition and where you are, but it's putting it all together. And so just, it's a little uncomfortable sometimes for some people when you see that identify it with AI, and I'm hesitant to use AI in some cases myself, but in this case, it's using the same exact algorithm and information. And so when we select that, it once again gives you the same choices as the previous classic, except it gives you a percentage of certainty, which I find actually, as a scientist, quite useful. So I know this is a painted turtle with 95% certainty. So if I was unfamiliar with this creature and I saw that, I would say, yeah, you're right. I'm going to pick that, or I'm going to feel good about saying that it's a painted turtle. You can see it also once again suggested that northern red-bellied cooter, but it's a 0.4% suggestion. So you know that's very unlikely. So I'm going to go ahead and select painted turtle. Oh, I forgot. You can also once again look at the eye for information. And I found this really interesting. It's the exact same information. It brings you to the same Wikipedia page about painted turtles, but it looks a little bit different. It has slightly different photos are served, and it has actually the exact same information otherwise. So I'm going to select this taxon as my painted turtle of choice. And then once again, I'm going to upload it to actually submit it to iNaturalist. And then it's part of my biodiversity list on here. It's loading at this point when I took the screenshot. And then finally, the last part is the confirmation of IDs from different experts that or people that are confirming it. And so this one has then been confirmed as an Eastern painted turtle by multiple people since this observation was originally made. And so if we look at this observation on the desktop, and this might be interesting to you if for other observations, if you're trying to learn about other species, not only you can see that it's a research grade up at the top, so you know that this is a confirmed identification. You can see the date and the time that it was originally submitted, but the map also shows you where other painted turtles have been seen on the island or in our area. So that's maybe useful information. So I thought I'd show you a few other examples of what information we can gather from species observations. So this is a classic plant. I say classic. It's a species that's quite common on Nantucket, and so we expect to have multiple observations of these during our BioBlitz. So this is bearberry. And I wanted to show you this because it's a great photo of a singular photo that can help capture a lot and help for a positive identification. So we have the flowers, we have the leaves, it's just far back enough that you can see a little bit of the habit of the species. You can, as I mentioned earlier, upload multiple photos. So you might want to take one that's a little bit farther back so you can get the full extent of the plant, and then some that are up close for some of those identifying characteristics. This is once again a research grade plant, and you can see where it's been seen in other parts of the island. So this is a photo that's an example to me of the evidence of a species. So we didn't see the white-tailed deer itself, but we actually saw a fallen antler. And so by taking the picture of the antler where it fell, we know that there was a deer there at some point. And so it's a research grade observation of a white-tailed deer. And then you can see the map again of where other deer have been seen. So this holds true for tracks like in the sand, footprints, feathers if you find feathers of any birds. So there's many other ways that we can see, especially for our mammals that we may not be able to see individually, or some of our bird species. You can often find evidence of the species itself. Um, Another thing I want to remind people of, I'm such a land ecologist. I work in the uplands, that I sometimes forget we can beach comb as well. There's a lot of great biodiversity on the beach, obviously, and we can upload things even if they once were alive. So seashells or scallop shells are a great example. You might see a scallop shell, it doesn't have a live scallop in it anymore, but washed up on the beach, it's like evidence of scallops in that area. This is one of our seaweeds, our dead man's fingers or codium. That's very common on the shoreline. And you might notice something different about this record is that this little pink exclamation point. So when you click on that, it tells you that's an introduced species to the Nantucket main island. And so iNaturalist does let you know when something is not native or sometimes invasive. And so this is a good species to focus on, or, to have records of so that we can know where all these non-native species are washing up, perhaps. Similarly, also a not native species, this is a good example of, you might not know what this is, but you might think it's biological, and it is. So we have this egg case, which I took a picture of in March of 2020. But in March, it's a viable egg case waiting to hatch. And so I put that on there, and it was identified as a Chinese mantis. I knew it was a mantis species, but I wasn't sure which of our mantids it was. It was identified by multiple people to be a Chinese mantis. And I want to point out that there's some species experts like this Mantodia person who they identify almost all of the Chinese of the mantid species. And I don't have any idea who they are, where they live, or what part of the world they live in, but that is their particular area of focus. And so that's been confirmed as a Chinese mantid. You can also find out more about when species are likely to be seen. So for example, you click on the Chinese mantis page generally within iNaturalist. They tell you who has seen the most of these, who has identified the most of these, but also this histogram, or this figure rather, of seasonality. So when are you most likely to see a Chinese mantid? It would be September and October when they're an adult. But anyway, it's an interesting tool for learning more about the species that you find. I also want to point out what happens if you tag a rare species. So this is New England blazing star, which we typically start seeing blooming in August to September here on Nantucket. We might have some entered as part of our BioBlitz this year. Maybe they're vegetative still. But what you can see from this is there's that little VU, which is vulnerable. Excuse me, that means it has some kind of conservation status. iNaturalist doesn't always get this right, but it has a lot of our state listed species here. And you can see from the map, I don't think that this light dress was growing in the middle of the ocean. What happens is it automatically buffers the location information. So you know basically by looking at this that this plant occurs on Nantucket, but you can't go and find it and pick it yourself. Of course, Laetris is a very common species late in the summer. It's not a hidden gem, but I like that iNaturalist automatically protects a lot of our rare species resources. And so if you see this, like if you were the person who recorded this, you could still see the location information, but someone else looking at it will probably see this buffered species occurrence, just so that you know what to expect. All right, and so going back to our Nantucket BioBlitz. So our Nantucket BioBlitz for 2025, once again, is July 25th to August 8th. It covers all of Nantucket County, which includes Nantucket Main Island, Tuckernuck, and Muskegon, and surrounding waters. So you could be in a boat just offshore, or on the shoreline, or swimming, or I don't know. You could be, we could get some additional fish species. And in the water and maybe on the other islands, which would be really cool to add to the BioBlitz. Here are just a few random species that I think were cool from our 2024 BioBlitz. These are not by any means the most or the rarest. They were just kind of representative of a few different groups. So for me, the red-headed pine sawfly was a new one. I actually saw this with Jenny, who recorded this observation. So these sawflies that were specific specifically on our pitch pines. We had these cool harlequin bugs. I'm super interested as a plant ecologist. I'm actually more interested in the insects I find because I find I don't know them very well. So I love putting them in iNaturalist and learning about these new species. We had round leaf sundews, which are these great or not parasitic, carnivorous plants of the marshes. We had baby barracudas. These were submitted through a class at the UMass Field Station that was seine netting in right off of Folgers Marsh in the Nantucket Harbor, and so they had some really cool observations of fish species. Who knew that barracuda were in our harbor? We had Turk's cap lilies, the violet coral fungus. Anything bright and colorful in the forest is crazy. These ruddy ducks were a really cool observation because they were unusual for this time of year. So ruddy ducks we usually see, I think, in the winter, and to see this pair in July of last year was really new and unique observation. And so that added to not the species for the island, but the timing of being here. So that was new information. And then I told you I was going to show you a slime mold. So we have this wolf's milk slime mold, which is really cool. They look like the candy nerds got spilled on the ground or something. But this is where I learn something new every single year by doing the BioBlitz. Wolf's milk slime mold. What slime mold are we going to find in 2025? And so before we get into the 2025 iNaturalist BioBlitz collection, I wanted to do some highlights from 2024 so that we know what numbers we're trying to beat. So 2024 was our most successful BioBlitz to date. It was 2 weeks at the end of July. We had over 3,600 observations, and we had a total so far of 975 species. Now, I say so far, not because people are continuing to collect data or information because this BioBlitz has ended, but because with all the observations that came in, some of them still have to be identified or verified. So if you look at the far left on that 3,641 observations, more than half are up to research grade, but almost a third need identification to bring it up to research grade. So that number of species could increase, but at this point, a year later, I'm feeling like that 975 is a good number. So I'm, throwing it out there that I want our target this year is going to be 1,000 species. And you can see that breakdown of the species too. We had mostly plants because plants are the best. Also because plants don't move when you try to take their photo, and they're the basis for our habitat. So plants are very important. We had a lot of insects, mollusks, arachnids. Birds are more difficult. I will say birds are difficult on iNaturalist because you do have to take a photo. And so not everyone, I know I find it's really hard for me to take photos of birds, without a special lens or something like that. But we try, and we can add vocalization recordings as well now. So that's super helpful. I'm interested in our top species. So which ones are we going to have to beat this year? This top species list actually really reflects what we saw last year for what were the most common things that people saw. We saw northern bayberry, which was coming into fruit. We saw the sickle leaf golden aster, which iNaturalist calls sickle leaf silkgrass or something. Every common name is a little bit different. But this yellow golden aster, it was in full bloom at the end of July, so very obvious. So lots of photos of it. Scrub oak, foxgrape. I love that the first nine things are all plants. And our first animal was the Atlantic horseshoe crab with 22 observations. And so we had our first animal was a horseshoe crab. So that's great. So we'll see what comes up this year. I'm curious what our top five, top 10 will be for 2025. And just to, kind of urge everyone and get everyone excited again to go back to the past 4 years of BioBlitz data. Like I said, we've been doing this since 2021. Last year was the best year ever with the most observations and the most number of species. For a long time, we were trying to beat that first year's 868 species, and last year we really did it. So I think this year will be, there's a lot of people excited about the BioBlitz this year. So I think we're gonna really have a stellar year, and we'll maybe beat those numbers, or at least add to them, right? We want to add to the biodiversity. And it's not just the number of species and observations, it's also geographic, right? So this is once again the 2024 data. And so you can see all the different locations, the different colors are just different taxa, whether it's plants, animals, insects, um, birds, etc. But you can see that there are some gaps. So some areas we could really add to that biodiversity information by targeting new locations. In 2024, no one went to Tuckernuck during the BioBlitz. Tuckernuck is hard to get to. It's the lagoon has closed up, so there's a new area to launch to dock and to get on there. And I know in previous BioBlitzes, I've been able to get out there and others, so we had some information from Tuckernuck. But that would be a great thing if in 2025 we could have a crew go out to either Tuckernuck and or Muskegon. That would be fun. You can see all the points in the water as well. So remember those water aquatic locations count as well. When you look at the eastern end of the island, you can see big areas in the South Pasture and Tom Nevers around Sackasha Pond that could use some blitzing, some bio blitzing. And then way over on the western side, I'm happy to see that Linda Loring has a number of records up north of Long Pond. But even on our own, on the eastern side and on the far western edge of our property, we could use some additional surveys. All through Head of the Plains, it'd be great to get out there and add to that biodiversity information. So we hope that you join us. We have a great project with the Nantucket BioBlitz. So within iNaturalist, we have an official project. But even if you don't officially join the project, your observations during that time period on Nantucket will be contributed to the BioBlitz. We hope that you join the project officially because it helps us communicate through the project. But either way, you're gonna be adding to that biodiversity information. We have a few different events associated with the BioBlitz that are all free and open to the public. We have Friday morning nature walks here at the Linda Loring Nature Foundation at 10 a.m. on the 25th and August 1st. We have a special BioBlitz trip to the creeks, which will be looking at some more salt marsh habitat and shoreline, maybe some beach combing on July 29th. And then, as I mentioned earlier, on August 8th, which is a Friday at 1 p.m., we're going to be having a wrap-up party, a little get-together where we can talk about some highlights that we've seen so far and just kind of celebrate all the biodiversity information that we've collected. All of this information about these various field trips can be found at llnf.org in our calendar. You can register for any of the walks. And if you have any questions, whether it's now or during any of the BioBlitzes or how to use iNaturalist, feel free to email me with any questions. My email is below. And I hope that we see some observations from you during the Nantucket BioBlitz. And I'm excited. Let's get out there and, you know, document some biodiversity. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing.